I think there's been a change in the regulations, so A1 and A2 have been established as something that should be expected in new builds. I think the problem with that is it can't be retrospectively applied, so it means there's lots of buildings that are now to add to buildings that would have been non-compliant. There's more buildings that are non-compliant if they don't live up to that A1 and A2 thing. On the local level, a lot has changed in terms of public space and the sort of asset stripping attitude that the local government had prior to that is not still there. So these are important achievements. What I fear and what I worry about is the fact that we have a situation where the population, rather than being able to see themselves in this community, I feel they have exceptionalized the circumstances. So because of the spectacle of the fire and how dramatic it was and how extreme it was, I think people around the country just find it hard to believe that they may be in buildings where the same thing could potentially happen. As I'm sure others have said, you have cinemas, you have hospitals, you have schools, you have university halls that have similar kind of setup, that have HPL on them. So they are dangerous buildings to be in or around. And unfortunately, there hasn't been the action that needs to take place in order to guarantee those people's safety. I think that is a major failing on consecutive governments. So there's victories, which I think should be emphasized, but I think there's also major things that need to be changed as soon as possible. I think that if you have had an inquiry into Grenfell find that the building was non-compliant in loads and loads of ways, how many other buildings do not have resource put towards having an inquiry about their setup that would also be non-compliant? And so, therefore, we need to connect with other communities as much as possible that are in this situation, as has already been done. There are organizations to work with people that have been told they have to pay to get the stuff removed themselves. Obviously, the government subjected them to a long, protracted war to try and get that funding in order to remove the stuff. Because of the current crisis, we have not been able to see that stuff removed. There has been other building projects that have been going ahead, as anyone that lives in London will see. Why couldn't there have been a situation where that stuff could have been removed? What essentially that means is you have people in a lockdown situation in buildings that are like Grenfell. So that's a really scary prospect. That's kind of the way I see it at this stage. I'm hoping that the inquiry can get started again in a way that allows the internal dialogues between the companies, between important bodies like BRE, and the potential problematic relationships which may have existed between private companies and a body that is meant to be working on the testing. And then we are able to link that to what actually happened. If you have evidence that a company has been receiving some form of directions from somebody inside an important organization, helping them pass tests, and then that material is being a vital link in the chain of things that went wrong and led to mass death, then there needs to be the mechanisms within government to make prosecutions as soon as possible. We should not be in a situation after 3 years where no arrests seem to have been made that I know of. And, there may have been situations where people have been questioned, but we have not seen arrests. And that's something that people really, really need to see. To what extent, when, say, Celotex put a post on their website saying Celotex has entered government, we are now shaping building regulations to maximize benefits to our industry, what does that mean? What did that post mean that was then deleted? Who was it in government that they were connected to, and why was it that a company saw fit to boast about their influence on regulations that are vital in the administering of life? It's important for people in the community to understand that they have every right to feel aggrieved, to feel upset, enraged actually with the inaction of the government and with the lack of a confrontational position taken by the government towards these companies, the invisibility of the companies, but also it's important to be at the service of the bereaved and the survivors in any way that we can. But I think that when we are in a situation where social distancing is not a necessity, we need to take steps to close that gap between the companies and between the public. You know, I think it's a shame that more of the people in this country have not, and I think it's a failure of the media, a major failure of the media. Some of them claim to have been somewhat muzzled by the inquiry, saying they don't want to speak on things that are going to come out in the inquiry. But the essential function of the media in this situation should have been to make visible those companies and to make visible the workings of them. As far as I know, an inquiry is not like a court case where it will be judged by a jury. One of my fears, though, is that in the inquiry revealing things and it being splashed on the front pages of the news, potentially the companies could then claim that court cases have been prejudiced. So I understand that it's a delicate situation, but I still feel that more stories should have been done directly focusing on these companies, especially when the information was put out there in the immediacy after the fire, where the companies themselves had things that they'd been saying that were seriously worrying. You know, it's not just a matter of helping people in this community and the bereaved and the survivors, it's a matter of public protection. So it's in the public interest for them to know what kind of materials are in their buildings.